Well, good morning to those still in morning time. Actually, I'm kind of close enough to the East Coast that I think we're the morning people, or we're the later people. Sober Heathen here with Brian today to talk about all kinds of stuff. I am half asleep, I feel like. It's been a long weekend of sunshine, leaky sinks, and three teenage-ish boys running around the house. So it's been quite the weekend, but I love every friggin' second of it because I'm sober and able to enjoy it. So, good morning, Brian. Thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it feels like forever since I had a one-on-one interview. It's been Adam and I kind of bantering back and forth, so this is really good. Glad to get back into the seat here and hear about new things. Really enjoyed your content. Adam and I had talked about you a couple times. You got a real great perspective on things. I was just listening to a little bit of your podcast with Daryl. Yep, and that was good stuff. Just looking at your profile, talk a lot about spiritual awakenings, emotional sobriety, and other things. What's your passion, Brian? What brings you to talk about recovery?
I feel like they say you got to give it away to keep it. I feel like I've been very fortunate in the opportunities that have been provided to me in recovery. It's been an unconventional journey, I just like to I can see it from both sides, right? I mean, we all can. I've been there with the thinking problem. And getting my mind, no pun intended, wrapped around that really is a game changer. I mean, the rules of life haven't changed, but the way that I look at them have changed, and it's amazing results. Amazing results. So, I just like to share my experience and what I went through, and maybe it can help somebody along the way.
Well, you just helped me because I love that. The rules of life haven't changed, but how I look at them. That's great. Yeah, so I guess let's just jump right into some topics here then. So when you talk about spiritual awakening, we were talking a little bit before we went live on how me personally, in my journey through recovery, that was the hardest thing. And I'm still not 100% sure that I've had that. Completely. I think I've had blips where I'm like, oh man, this is it. This is the ticket. And then I don't know. I'm not sure. I've had things that I can't explain happen, but I'm not sure. So what does that really mean to you? What does spiritual awakening mean to Brian?
Well, I think, the fact that you are having trouble defining it, I mean, probably means that you've had one. Because most of the times, I think that they're just, ineffable, just hard to describe. A lot of times we are limited by language. But, I just chaired a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the topic was the spiritual awakening, but I didn't want to know how people shared it. I wanted to know what the content, because that's the message, right? Step 12. Upon having a spiritual awakening, we tried to share this message. So I was asking what the content was, and I just got a bunch of AA lingo. And maybe that, and I don't know what people's messages are. Everybody's message should be different. The literature, the AA literature talks about the uniqueness of spiritual awakening. So I guess you could say they're like fingerprints. Nobody's is going to be the same. But the one thing that a genuine spiritual awakening will have, they all have in common, is the ability, handle life successfully and to not think that it's a dead end, to have hope. I think that's the flip. And it's not going to be, this great big blinding white light. It's going to be the little things in recovery that add up. And then just one day it's like, oh my God, I look around, everything is different than it was 3 years ago. My partner, where I live, where I work, the friends I have, with a few exceptions, everything is different. And I think for me, the spiritual awakening is me taking accountability. Because where I'm at right now is, I create my problems. Nobody else does. And I also contain all my solutions. So everything is internal for me. I don't need anything external for my sobriety. Everything is in here. And I think that's the big aha moment for me. That was the big, so if I had to put it down, like spiritual awakening for me is like, everything is internal. Everything.
Yeah. People don't make you mad. You make yourself mad, right? Like, it is internal. Like, there's a lot of things that if you look inwardly and like, why am I feeling this way? I totally get that.
So if something triggers me, the example I like to give, if I'm driving down the freeway and there's someone going 50 miles an hour in the left lane, in the HOV lane, and I'm getting all pissed off, well, there's a reason. Usually it's because I'm running late, and whose fault is that? Right? And it's not worth it to me. There are things that are going to make me mad, angry. I'm still human, right? We're not trying to transcend the human condition, but anything that I put out, like if I get angry at you, I'm just projecting.
Sure.
I'm projecting myself onto you. And if, what you're doing is making me mad, really, it's just a reflection back at myself. So if I get triggered like that, that's a sign for me that I got something to look at. And that's the recognition. And now I'm at choice. And that's another part, I think, of the spiritual awakening for me is reclaiming my birthright of choice, because I felt like when I was using, I didn't have a choice but to use, but that was my choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I understand that, I'm at choice if I want to go to the liquor store. I'm at choice if I want to go hit my dealer up, which I don't know any dealers in Utah is kind of another reason why I'm here. It's just, I'm responsible, and that responsibility and the accountability, and not playing the blame game, getting out of victim mode and being a creator is a life changer. It's a life changer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's good. Adam, who's on the podcast quite a bit, just said the other day, I always say connection is the opposite of addiction. And he changed it the other day. He posted, how about creation is the opposite of addiction? And you kind of just touched on that.
Yeah. Because getting out of that victim mindset, life's not fair. If only everybody would be doing what I want, when I want, how I want, everything would be okay. That's not the way it works. And that's, another paradox. There are so many paradoxes, but hey, I got to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And just let life unfold. Life's going to happen anyways. So right. Just let life happen. And letting go of that control and letting life happen, that's how I got control back. At least it seems manageable, and understanding that the only thing I can control is how I react to life, respond to life.
Yeah. Yeah. Got control back over yourself, because that's like you said, that's the only thing you can. Like, yeah. Yeah. How I can't control the world, but I can control how I act or react to it. And holy crap, was that a test yesterday?
Well, it's a test every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, why am I getting pissed off? Oh, yeah, I really don't have control over my dog here, so just
Mhm.
go ahead and bark and dog. Go be a dog.
Right. Could be a dog.
Yeah.
I like that. So you chaired meetings. So what kind of meetings are you involved with these days, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So, I'm 2.5 years sober, but a little bit longer than that. And
Awesome.
I still, I don't go to as many AA meetings as I did my first year. I was a daily guy, sometimes more than one. Um, so it's still the AA meetings. I go to 2, 3, 4 a week. I only need one good meeting a week, but the thing is I never know what meeting that's going to be. So
Right.
I try to, hit at least a couple.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad because I know that you mentioned the steps a handful of times just talking before we went live, and you mentioned step 12 just a minute ago. I'm so glad you said that because the AA meetings, and I know it's the diehards that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
They don't hear me say it, but I say it all the time. AA meetings are fantastic. They can be. Not all of them. Not all of them. You're going to run into some douchebags. You're going to run into some that people there just get their sheet signed. That's going to happen. But when you find one, like you said, I need one a week. I just don't know what that one is. When you find a good one, man, when you walk out of there, there's that connection. There's that, to me, it's a spiritual thing.
Yes.
Like, a bunch of people coming together just to support each other because they know the hell that you've been through. And there's something super great about that. And that's where I fell in love with AA. And then, things evolved. I don't go to AA anymore because honestly, I'm afraid that, it's going to get ruined for me. Like this guy that we were talking about before, that's always up everybody's ass on X. It's like, I'm afraid I'm going to run into somebody like that. And then the good times that I remember, like the best AA meetings were the ones in treatment. Because you had no choice but to come in there and spill your beans and really get authentic. And then we'd have a speaker meeting on Sundays when I was in treatment, and it was just a whole community of people coming in to listen to these things. And man, it was my favorite time of the week because there's something special about a really good meeting.
Yeah. That's the connection.
Yeah.
That connection, because the individual needs the group to recover, right? And so you have a bunch of people, like-minded people with a common goal, and it's a spiritual solution. So yeah, a lot of spirituality in it, and then sometimes not. I mean,
sometimes not.
Yeah. For sure.
So if you listen to the podcast, any of the people that are listening right now, you probably listened before. And if it's not, and this is your first time, cool. Thanks for being here. Adam and I talked about Matt. I've had Katie from Thrive Recovery on. She talks a lot about naltrexone and the Sinclair method. And there's been a lot of guests on here that are open to Matt, things like Suboxone, methadone. But there's also another avenue that I think is gaining a lot of steam, and that's like the psychedelic side of it, right? And
Yeah.
Adam and I have been talking extensively about this. Again, not to pick on AA, but to kind of it makes Bill W. a little more human. So the fact that he was doing the belladonna treatment, it's basically a cocktail of a variety of things in Towns Hospital. And he had a spiritual awakening after he talked with Ebby. And then he went a couple decades later to try to recreate that thing by trying LSD, which it was legal through when it was prescribed by doctors when he did that.
Yeah.
I had to throw that out there too.
Yeah.
But he was on to something there too, and I think it makes Bill more human. So what are your thoughts on that, Brian?
Well, so I am a proponent of psychedelic use in recovery. And that's just based on my experience. Mm-hmm. So, I'm a guy probably like most of us who never had any respect for any drug, any pill, any, beer, alcohol, and putting in my mouth and in my body. But I never did psychedelics because I was terrified of them. I mean, the stigma, right? I mean, it's going to rearrange your chromosomes, man. And so I didn't do that. So my introduction to psychedelic assisted mental health therapy happened a couple of years before I got into the rooms of AA and really got into recovery. And the reason for it was I was dominated by negative thinking patterns. I didn't understand my emotions. I didn't understand that the inner critic in my head, that I didn't have to listen to it. I just thought that was reality. I just thought that's the way it was. And I was at the end. The reason why I did this is because I was at a last resort. I didn't want to die at this point, but I was tired of playing a game that I didn't think I couldn't win. And I was just being worn down. So, over the course of a couple of months, because, this is in 2020. So, this is underground. The facilitator, a mental health professional, using this stuff to help people out, because in his words, he's like, you can pack about 10 years of conventional therapy, into this journey. Right. And so my first experience with psychedelics was this mental health treatment. And it blew me away. Figuratively, the science behind it, the psychedelics, they increase brain activity. And if at a high dose, when they image someone's brain and they're on a high dose of psychedelics, it's very similar to when they image a brain, of a Buddhist monk who is in deep meditation. And so the science is, the ego, the part of the brain that's the ego, the default mode network. And that's the traffic cop of the brain. And it tells you, you can go this way. And pretty much, when you've been around 4 or 5 decades, the neural pathways we have are pretty deep. And so that limits our perspective and how we view things, because the brain is a prediction machine, right? And so by slowing down, or in my case, this first time, putting that default mode network or the ego to sleep, having it take a nap, that is the ultimate get outside of yourself. And they call it ego dissolution. And so what I got from that journey was, I felt unconditional love. We're all connected. All of these things down here that I make a big deal about are really trivial. We're spiritual beings having a human existence. And it, without me knowing it at the time, I couldn't put a label on it, but it got me to believe in something greater than myself.
Sure.
That is what that experience did. And by the way, the negative thinking patterns, gone for a couple of weeks. And then they tried to kind of eat their way back in, but then, you have to, and that's how I got into spirituality, right? Because I thought spirituality at that point was synonymous with religion. I didn't know. And so I got into that, and I think I was well on my way to turning my life around, but then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so that 2 months after I had this, and so I stopped everything with spirituality and started reading everything I could about COVID. And within a couple months, I was drinking again. So, I feel very fortunate that I was able to do that. And so, my thought on the psychedelics, and then I used some psilocybin during my first year of recovery, and we can expound on that, but, I really think it helped. But I'm not advocating everybody doing psychedelics, right? I've never done psychedelics recreationally.
Okay.
Right? It's always a workspace. And, this is something you can't talk about in AA.
No.
At all.
No.
And you know, and a lot of people don't understand because there's a lot of stigma and all that. Just like what I told you, and I did a lot of research and I talked to people before, you know,
Yes.
I jumped in the pool. And let me tell you, man, I was terrified. I was terrified because I didn't start out with the psilocybin. It was 5-MeO DMT,
Mhm.
which apparently is the Mount Everest of psychedelics, but you know, very effective if done right. And then the most important part is the integration afterwards, you know, with a professional, so you can
Yeah.
figure stuff out, I guess, right?
Yeah. And like the purpose of this podcast, well, originally was to tell my story through the good and the bad. So there's tears and there's all these things on there. It's not just me coming on here being like, oh my God, life is so great in recovery, because that's not the truth. But the purpose now, as what's going on, is to create like a buffet of ideas for recovery. So go through and try what you want. This is not an endorsement of everything. I don't use the Sinclair method, but I love that it's out there and I love talking about it because it might save somebody else's life, right?
Right.
I want to explore the psychedelics a little more. And it's something that, you know, I'm doing a lot of research on, and I'll make a decision if it's right for me. But I think that it absolutely helps people. I've read enough articles and posts from people that are doing it, and I have you here now. There's obviously some success to it. But yeah, the purpose of this discussion is to put it out there. A supermarket, go in with your grocery cart, and you fill up your basket with whatever you think sounds like it might work for you. And like I tell the clients that come into work all the time, if you're using it and your intent for using it, only you know what that is. And if you're being honest with yourself and you're using it for exploratory things and to help your recovery, then you're doing good. If you're using it every day just to numb the things you don't want to feel or for other reasons, only you know that, and you just need to be honest with yourself, right? So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. And so you said you'd be willing to expand a little bit on the I can never say it.
Psilocybin.
Thank you, psilocybin. God, I'm gonna have to like write it down in syllables so I can say it right. But
We could just say mushrooms.
okay. So yeah, if you're willing to talk a little bit more about that, I think the more that we hear, the more we can kind of understand it to end that stigma. So if you don't mind, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, like I said, I got in the rooms. Well, this last time I had one relapse. January of 2022. And I think probably, you know, from about, well, springtime till the end of summer, you know, I was using psilocybin mushrooms, maybe once or twice a month to just inner exploration, right? So I had, you know, the previous experience, I didn't have you know, the believing in something better, greater than myself, and making the decision, not the action, but the decision, you know, to give the keys to the bus over to a higher power. I mean, I was all in on that. I had experienced that previously. So, but the one thing I saw in AA that I didn't want was I didn't want to be sober for years and decades and be miserable. Because if I'm miserable, I'm going to drink. I mean, what's the point? I mean, that was my mindset. So I need to be happy. And if I need to be happy, then I got to figure out, you know, something, because I wasn't learning anything about emotional sobriety in AA. And maybe that's because I wasn't ready, or, you know, maybe it's because no one was talking about it. But what the mushrooms did was it allowed me to just have a different perspective on looking at things. Like one example is trying to figure out what is forgiveness actually, you know? I mean, why is it so important? And, you know, honesty, you know, why is that so important? And I mean, what's revealed to me is, hey, honesty is the lubrication of recovery. It's like the oil in the engine. If I'm not being honest with myself, I don't have a chance. Because it's just like what you said earlier, you know, if you're using psychedelics, or if you're smoking weed, you're doing weed maintenance. Only the person knows if they're doing that just for effect and just to escape. And if I'm doing it just for effect, just to get high and just to escape, what's going on right now, well, that's not recovery, right? And so I think the emotional sobriety part was really helped, by doing the psilocybin or mushrooms. Does that answer the question? I feel like I was kind of rambling there, but
No, it was great. It's great. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. I think the slowing down and giving these things an opportunity, the times that I have tried, like THC or whatever, it was never my thing. Like when I was drinking, I couldn't get high, and I didn't really ever put it together that you're too drunk to be stoned. But I tried it several times. I'm like, this shit doesn't work. And then the times that I tried it in the recovery, it's really, and this is just pot. This is like, it slowed my mind down, and the memories. Like I have laid there and had memories of my childhood and other things like come back, and it's where my brain is slow, and I could really like, like I remember things that I never thought, that were gone, and they come in and they were just back. Anyway, now I'm rambling, but I could, if there is a way to really slow it down and to explore and get into your mind and really face things, man, I think that's crucial. Like, because, for my work, I can't use THC or anything like that. I'm a recovery coach, you know what I mean? But if this can help some of the clients that come in looking like I used to look, and that can help them get to my mindset quicker, I'm all for exploring it, man. I really am, because I wish I would have known about some of these things. But I'm coming up, September will be my 2 years or whatever. But the way that I came through it was, it's like Mr. Garrison, like, all drugs are bad, okay?
All drugs are bad.
Yeah, okay, everything's bad, okay? Anything that you do, anything you step outside, of complete total miserable abstinence. And I'm not saying abstinence is miserable. I shouldn't have said it that way. I was miserable, and I wrote that down because you said that. If I can bring my notes back up here. I'm not happy. Why get sober if I'm not happy? I think that's a really big thing, like, this is sobriety. And, when you're early on, and you're like, God dang, everything's miserable. Why wouldn't you go back to the thing that didn't make you, or at least acted as if it was making you feel a little less crappy? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if this can bring that happy and that light bulb, turn that light bulb on a little bit quicker, I'm all for this stuff, man. I really am.
Yeah, and I omitted the assistance I got from psychedelics with my fourth step, and so I'd like to share that real quick.
Please.
So the reason why I thought I was in the Terrible Human Hall of Fame, that's what I like to call it, it was just bathing in self-loathing, is because I made a decision, some 20 years ago, to party instead of be a husband and a father. And to compound that, I didn't rectify it for like 2 or 3 years, or attempt to rectify it. My daughter she's an adult now. She's 31 years old. And, we're still estranged. It's been 3 or 4 years, I think, since I've talked to her, but I carried a lot of guilt and shame and just self-loathing around, and it was destroying me. So I did the fourth step with my sponsor, put myself on the resentment list, and did all of the things, right? Admitted all my stuff to me, to my higher power, and to another human, my sponsor. And I felt lighter. I did. I thought, hey, this is great. A couple of months later, I am at a psychedelic retreat in Northern California. And the reason why I'm there is, I want to discover, what my limiting beliefs and all that are. And I can limit them, right? What happened was none of that happened. What happened is that I put the nail in the coffin on my fourth step. So with a facilitator and with workshopping this before the journey and the weekend at the retreat, and then workshopping it after with these professionals, because this is what they do, I was able to actually go back on my timeline, on the quantum timeline, and I replayed my life. And I remember, I don't remember visually, but I can feel it. But there are some things that are like still shots. And one of them was an 8-year-old kid scared of everything. And then I went along. And then when I got to the point where the 27-year-old Brian was, that part of me that I detested and put in jail and blamed for everything because of the decision that he made to party instead of be a family man, I was able to talk to him and shower him with love and pardon him, I guess, if you will, and tell him that he could come out and play and be part of the group. And that demon, that beast, that monster that I had built up in my head to be so big, when I gave it nothing but love, it dissolved.
Wow.
It dissolved. And so I do not carry, yes, I'm sad, and it sucks that, I fucked up my relationship with my daughter, right? I can't do anything about that now. And I don't carry guilt and shame around because of that. And the proof is that I was doing a little bit of stalking, electronic stalking, I guess, but I have access to the court dockets here in the state. And so I put in my daughter's name, see if, she's still living at the same place or see if she's gotten into trouble. And there was a new case and she was the petitioner. And I'm like, oh, holy shit, what is this? And so I click on it. It was a name change. Now my daughter's single. She's not married, but she changed her last name from my last name to her stepdad's last name. And the reason on the petition was I don't associate with my biological dad anymore. And I consider my stepdad my real dad. And I'm just like, oh, damn. But the wave of guilt and shame didn't come.
Okay.
And so I was just astounded by that.
Yeah.
So what I get from that experience is something that's really served me well. No amount of regret is going to change the past. No amount of anxiety or worry is going to change the future. Yeah. But just a little bit of gratitude can change everything in the present. And that's all we have. It's right now. And so that has really, really helped me in recovery, just, staying in the present. And, if I'm worried about, if I'm searching for a job and, I'm struggling trying to find it, look, I'm going to find a job, but the amount that I stress and worry about it isn't going to affect that. Now, that doesn't mean I don't stress and worry about anything, but when I'm stressing out or I'm worrying about something, I'm not in the present. I might think I am, but I'm not. And in the present to me means I'm taking pleasure in the thing that I'm doing, talking to you on the podcast right now and giving you my undivided attention instead of thinking about, what am I going to post on X after this? And, things like that right now.
Yeah.
And simple, right? But not necessarily easy, especially when shit hits the fan.
Well, we'll just end the podcast now because I don't think it can get any better than that, dude. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the first time that you hear something that it really sets in, but it's when you need to hear it, or it's when you're really listening, I guess, because
Yeah.
imagine if we could just grasp onto that. No amount of shame or guilt is going to change the freaking past, right? Like
Right.
sitting here and ripping my own heart out that I have done on many nights, remembering my kids crying their eyeballs out in the back seat of my truck while dad's drunk as shit hitting the rumble strips on the highway trying to eat a slice of pizza, and they're terrified. And I I put them in extreme danger, and my heart drops and I want to puke every time I think about that I did these things. But if I could really just say, you know what, they're out in the living room right now, they're safe. And when I get done with this podcast, we're going to have a great day until it's time to take them home and just live in the moment. That was a terrible thing that I did, but it's done. And it really is just a memory, and how I choose to address it. They're a little bit younger. They might still think back and be like, oh my God, I'm terrified. I can't believe my daddy did this to me. Well, they don't call me daddy anymore. They're 11. They're men. If you ask them, they're ready to live on their own. But if we could just focus on that and just let things be as they are. Holy crap. You know what I mean? Live in this moment. Yeah. Okay. So I gotta get the laundry done. I gotta do all these things. But right now I'm having a great conversation with a good human.
Yeah.
Sending a message out into the ether that hopefully touches somebody. I mean, this conversation's already helped me for today. I'm already in a better mood than I was when I sat down here.
Same thing here, for sure. For sure. And I mean, talking about mistakes for a minute, how boring would life be if I knew I wasn't going to make a mistake?
Right.
I wouldn't have to try, right? I just knew I'm going to be perfect. So what would the point be?
Good.
And yet we all beat ourselves up because we're not perfect.
Yeah.
It's unattainable. And I think maybe Adam put it on, like, if you went back and fixed everything, if you went back and fixed all of your mistakes you've made in your life, you'd erase yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so another big part of my spiritual awakening is making a mistake or failing. That's not end game.
Yeah.
I always looked at it as like end game.
Yep.
But it's not. It's life giving me an opportunity to learn something. And if I don't learn, guess what's going to happen? That same lesson's going to repeat itself at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody out there listening, if you make a mistake, hey, congratulations.
Yeah.
You're human. Don't dwell on it. Just try to learn. It's what I do. I try to learn so I don't make the exact same mistake again.
Yeah.
And it just, the whole perspective. I mean, just sitting here and just being grateful for everything that I've got being around me is just something I was totally incapable of doing. When I'm higher drunk all the time, because that's the only thing I'm thinking about is me and how I can get higher drunk.
Yeah, I think so. You can get into this trap. I used to make a lot more money than what I do for work today. And I make nothing on the podcast except for the thing that's invaluable, which is, connection with all of these awesome people. You know what I mean? But I'm okay. I'm okay with that. There are times, when the boys come over and they're like, hey, can we go do this? And it's like, I look at the bank account. I'm like, nah, I'm sorry, man. I'll try to say we can maybe do it next weekend or whatever, and then I start to get the feel bads. But here's the thing, that I try to remind myself, and it's kind of what you're talking about. Had I not made all these terrible decisions and get the 4 drunk drivings and been in jail and been into 4 inpatient treatments and all these outpatient treatments, and then I'm looking at this list. This list is, Michigan, Arkansas, Canada, Georgia, DC, Vancouver, England, California, London, all these people, and it goes on and on, of people that I've had on my podcast. I would have never met these people and been able to spread this message. And the DMs that I get randomly of people like, wow, that was a really powerful podcast, or thank you for posting what you posted. This, man, all that sadness and all that thing is really turning into something super beautiful, and it can, no matter what. And when people are brave enough, to talk about this and show the acceptance and the gratitude that you have, Brian, even with, the things that you talked about with your daughter. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really hard to see early on that there can be any positive when there's family disconnect like that. I didn't talk to my kids. They're 11 now. I didn't talk to them for like 2 years. I didn't see them for 2 years. I might have talked to them sporadically when they decided to answer the phone when I would call, but I didn't see them in person for over 2 years. I missed 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays,
Yeah.
But I'm here now, and I'm a way better version of myself than I was before, and that has to be the important part of it. Not what I missed, but what I'm able to do now because of the work I put in.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's like glass half full instead of glass being half empty. And that's what recovery is that perspective shift.
Yeah.
And, the way I view all of my fuck ups are all of the suffering that I had to go through. I wish I wouldn't have caused as much collateral damage, but I can't do anything about that. I can make the amends, but that's it. And then just be a decent human being. All of the suffering that I've gone through, every single aspect of my journey in this life up to this point, I think is necessary for me to be sitting here talking to you today.
Yeah.
Because because that's the experience. And I think that's what really, people draw on. Because I remember when I got into AA, because I had that moment, I got desperate. I had a moment of clarity in my kitchen. I busted up my shoulder in an accident, and I was still going to the liquor store, and I was having to take an Uber because no one would give me a ride, and my car was totaled. And I'm taking an Uber to the liquor store. I'm like, I'm done. I mean, this is the end of me. And I'm standing in my kitchen, and I started to cry, and I asked myself, dude, do you want to live? And I'd been spending the last 2 decades convincing myself I didn't care if I lived or not. But the answer was immediate. Yes, I do want to live. And so that desperation gave me the motivation to keep going to meetings, right? Because if it wasn't for AA, I'd be dead. I don't bash on AA. I just don't think it's the be all end all. It provides connection.
Absolutely.
There's other recovery things that provide connection. And that's why I say connection is the opposite of addiction, right? Because we all isolate and all that. And I like the creation thing, because that is the spiritual awakening for me, the biggest part, going from being a victim. This isn't fair. You guys all suck. Why are you treating me like this? To being a creator, which is, hey man, I create my problems, all of them, and I contain all of my solution. And one of the things that, I like to quip about now is like, hey man, there are no problems. There are only solutions. So let's fix this, which is easy to say again, except for when, you're in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's where the connection comes in. When you're in it and you can't think, that's where the connection comes in to kind of power you through that. You're plugging into somebody else to help you power through that.
Yeah.
And you said there's only solutions. I have a sign on my desk at work that says everything is figure outable. I
like it.
Yeah. And because it is. I mean, almost everything is figure outable.
But if you're stuck in the problem, you're not really trying how to figure stuff out. And so that's why, like, I put the question up on X is is AA living in the problem, or is it living in the solution? And I think what I got back from everybody's comments in the poll was it depends on the person.
It does.
Well, I mean, it makes sense to me. I'm like, okay. But then there were a lot of explanations, and it just depends on where you're coming from. Like the guy we were talking about before we got on, it's just like, AA is the only way. And if you're doing something else, then you're not a real alcoholic. Well, okay. So to me, that guy's living in the problem, but to him, it's the only solution.
Right.
The only solution. So, and he's sober, right? Maybe he's not a nice dude, but he's sober.
He's sober. And so he doesn't have anything I want, but good for him for being sober. You know what I mean?
Leave it all.
You know?
Take nothing and leave it all.
Yeah. Yep. Take nothing. That's one source I'll take nothing from and leave it for the next person.
Yeah, and you know, like, and I had that early on. You know, my first example, the first business meeting I went to in AA, there's a lady in there who had 40 years of sobriety, but she wanted to change the meeting, a couple of aspects of that meeting to fit what she wanted. And she made it clear that, you know, my sobriety or any newcomer's sobriety was not as important to her as getting what she wanted. And I'm like, man, you're 40 years old and you're doing everything, or 40 years sober, and you're doing everything that, like, I'm being told not to do. And so I don't want that. And so that really kickstarted the emotional sobriety thing. Did the kids jump in the room there real quick?
No.
Oh, okay.
Nope. No, I might have hit something.
So and I had to learn. I really had to learn. It's like, look, not all of this AA program. I mean, you don't have to take it all and implement it all, you know? And I mean, you hear it all the time, take what you want and leave the rest, but actually implementing that was a big lesson for me. And I mean, and like, you know, what you're doing, I mean, you are not currently going to meetings because you don't need that.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's a drawback, and if it's creating drama and chaos, you know, it's not a good thing for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I just had a brain fart. I had something I was going to say, and it just went poof.
That happens to me more and more as I get older, for sure.
Yeah. God dang it. Well, I think AA like has. I was going to say, when you get into AA, maybe the first thing to do, I don't know, it's really hard to read a book that you don't give a shit about. So like, I can't say hand a big book to a newcomer because you want me to read a book. You know what I mean? That's instant gratification is a huge thing when it comes to addiction. And so to tell me that I got to read 164 pages of this book is really hard. But I really truly believe if, you know, I got a lot from my big books when I just sat and read it myself. And the one thing my first sponsor told me to do was, when you read it, you highlight what resonates with you. What is your truth is kind of how he worded it.
Yeah.
Highlight your truth and what you relate to. And that really helped me go through and kind of understand the big book, and kind of gave me, there's a lot of things that happen in the rooms that aren't from the big book. They're kind of things that have evolved over time, and there's lingo and things in that some of those things kind of like, and once I really got into the big book and read it, I was like, oh, that's not really part of it. That's just something that's kind of grown from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I try, maybe I don't say it enough, but definitely give the steps a shot. If you're early on, it's not going to hurt anything. You know what I mean? You're going to get something out of it if you allow yourself to, I think.
I agree with that. I mean, you know, my advice to anybody who's new, it would, you know, be to go to a meeting. And if they're already going to meetings, would be to get a sponsor.
Yeah.
You know, get a sponsor and start working the steps, and, you know, just go from there. Because I mean, I think everybody who's new is just like, I think hopeless is really something that they all have in common. I mean, that's something that I had, right? I mean, and to get in there and to hear people talking about stuff that I did, and drinking and using the way that I did, and they're laughing about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, okay, well, so I'm not a freak. There's other people like me. And if this thing didn't work, nobody would be here.
Yeah.
You know, so it has to work. So, you know, if it's not working, you know, that's, again, I think that's on me. But I think it's just got to be honest, and just, you know, hey, this is working for me. I don't want to do this. and just honesty, open-minded, and willingness.
Mhm.
That's how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just self-exploration. I mean, you go to any kind of group out there, whether it's we have one around here, Peer 360. That's a good one. It's kind of a Native American approach,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like those. There's a lot of the same messages no matter what group you get in, but get connected with people, because it's going to, knowing that you're not alone. I mean, I just recently had a couple guys come in that are younger guys, and they come in with their significant other, and then they both look like deer in the headlights, like, oh my god, I love, like, it's been two dudes, and the women that come in with it, like, they don't say these things, but the body language is like, this dude's bad. He's really, really bad. And then they sit down and they do the intake with me, and I start sharing sort of my point and my story or whatever as we're doing the intake. And both of them kind of just like, by the end, they're like, okay, all right. So he's not crazy. He's not the worst alcoholic or, addict on the planet.
Yeah.
This is how things go. And they walk out and they're like, phew,
Right.
this could be okay. This could be okay. Because very few people walk in with 4 drunk driving, and it's not like a wiener measuring contest. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to show them that it can get real bad and you can still make it. Yeah. And so they walk out with a little bit of hope, and that's the word that you used. I mean, you have hope in something, holy shit, that can change everything.
Game changer. Yeah.
I don't remember having hope for years. There was zero hope. Like, oh, lost a job, I'm going to go drink. Who cares? This is just my life now. It's just one giant shit show. But the moment that hope like peeked its little beam of light in at me, that's when things really started to.
And I think that kind of coincided with my moment of clarity, just a glimpse of clarity in my kitchen.
Yeah. In your kitchen.
I'm just like, there because I had been in AA, and the answer was just like, you got to go back.
Yeah.
You just have to go back, because if you don't, you're dead. And it's also like, I wasn't a binge. I was an everyday drinker. I wasn't a binge drinker. I didn't drink, gallons and gallons a day. But I drank a pint, sometimes 2. And it really just, the mental aspect of it. I mean, so really and truly, like it really was a thinking problem for me. And I was able to identify that early on. And I guess that's where I'm really fortunate. Because I think a lot of people, it takes a minute. Because what do you mean? Alcohol's not the antagonist here?
Yeah.
No, my mind is.
Mm-hmm.
My mind is the antagonist of this play. Alcohol's not. And so, that's AA personifies alcohol, right? Calls it cunning, baffling, and powerful. Well, that's my ego.
Yeah.
There's nothing more cunning, baffling, and powerful than this constant mental narration that goes on in my head if I'm paying attention to it. I mean, it does impressions, it can do my dead mom.
Yep.
Mostly it's me.
Me. That's it.
But so I've had a tough 2024. But I haven't thought about drinking, and to me that is, I mean, it's not a miracle because I can explain it, right? It's because I addressed the thinking problem, my thinking patterns, my shitty belief systems. And so you can recover.
Yeah.
Now, if I went out and had a beer or a shot of Jim Beam right now, I don't know what's going to happen. I could, be drinking for the next 6 months straight.
Yeah.
I'm not going to test that out. But the fact that I don't think about going to the liquor store, which is in walking distance now, they put, where was that before? I don't think about it.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to me.
I agree 100%. It's a war against yourself. That's at the end of the day, the alcohol will just sit on that shelf at the gas station or the liquor store unless I make the decision or lose the war with my mind to go walk down there, pick it up, pay for it, bring it home and put it in my body. Right. Like
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
that's where the battle is won and lost, is in the mind. And another thing that I like, I don't know where I heard it, but I say it an awful lot now. The things that are rattling around in here, it's really crazy how when they come out of here and they're refiltered back in through your ears, how different it can sound and be. And the same thing works when they're rattling around in here and you write it down on paper and filter it back through your eyeballs and reread it. Like some of my journal entries, even the next day I'd go back and read it, like, God damn, that was a little aggressive. You know what I mean? Like, because I would write. I learned in my last treatment, I learned to write in Elder Futhark. I learned what the runes meant or whatever. So I just kind of put them, letter for letter. And so I'd journal in that. So if the dude next to me was the problem that day, even though he was never the problem, it was always me. But if he was doing something that was annoying, I'd be like, this fucking guy over here, man, I'm so sick and tired of this and that. And then I go back and I read it the next day. I'm like, okay, you need to not be a dick. But I needed that filtration system. You know what I mean? And it's really hard. Like you said, the voices, the impersonations, everything that can go on in your mind, you got to get that filter. So that's where the sponsor comes in. If you find a good one, that's where the therapist comes in. That's where journaling comes in. That's where doing a video diary like I do. Holy crap. That's how the podcast started. It was a video diary of my experience and going back and listening to my voice and the things that I'm thinking. And it's like, God, you're so close there, dude, but you don't get it yet. And then you can just kind of see as things go. And it's super powerful for sure.
Yeah. You're being able to recognize, when I'm in self-will is, probably the biggest thing that I've gotten out of recovery, right? Because then I'm back at choice.
Yeah.
And you talk about going to the liquor store and all that, the relapse. I think a lot of it, self-pity is something that everybody has. And the problem with self-pity, from my experience, is that it comes served with a ton of sides of justifications. Right. And so I can, this isn't fair, all of this stuff. It's easy to slip back into victim mode. And if I stay there long enough, there's going to be a justification to go use at some point. And so that's why it's important to have the recognition. It's like, okay, I need to, and, if I'm thinking about myself, what are the exercises? What can I do? Yard work for me. I used to detest yard work. Go out and weed and pay attention to what you're doing, right? Get my finger and I'm not thinking about myself.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I can relate to the yard work thing.
Yeah.
When I was drinking, I would go out and I'd mow the lawn and I would miss stuff. And it's like, nobody will see it. I'm not going to hit this. No, she's not going to notice this one. She's not going to notice. And there'd be a lot of things that I would just skip. I'd make it look like it was done.
Yeah.
And so now I go out and I do it. And I'm not saying I don't miss anything. I miss things or whatever. But I'll be like, fuck it. I missed that with the weed whacker. I'm not going all the way back to get the goddamn weed whacker. And you know what happens every time? I go get the weed whacker and I walk my happy ass back out there and I get that little spot.
Right.
It's, because the mindset has changed and it's like, half-assed, half measures availed us nothing, right?
Right. Even especially with yard work.
Well, I don't need to carry around that little, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, oh, that's out there. Did you see it? Oh, and then when she see, it used to be, oh, you missed that. I'm like, oh shit, I'm sorry, I missed that. I didn't even see it. When in my head, it's like, I knew that that pile was behind that tree. I just didn't want to go back and get it.
Right. And I think that speaks to, kind of like the perspective shift, as in, hey, I get to do this.
Yes.
I don't have to.
Yep.
And, and then not shooting on myself. Like, if I'm not going to go mow the lawn today, I'm giving myself permission not to do that.
Right.
I'm not going to beat myself up because, it's 100 degrees and I don't want to go out and do it today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, just these simple things. I mean, they sound simple and all that, but, these are the things that are the results of, going to meetings, being connected, working the steps, doing the self-examination work.
Mhm.
You know, I think I'm fortunate in that, you know, I am in recovery because not a lot of people get to take as close a look at themselves as people in recovery do. And if I didn't need to do it to stay alive, I would have never done it.
Yeah.
And so it's like I've worked with guys and you know, and I think it's like, oh my God, you're going to get it. It's right here. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. And they don't get it. And I would get frustrated with that. But then my sponsor would be like, did you drink? I'm like, no. And he goes, well, then you're successful, right? You can't carry anybody. All you can do is carry the message.
Yep.
And the message is really carried by being a decent human being.
Absolutely.
More so than jumping on a podcast or talking to people or trying to preach, right? It's just being well, maybe the podcast reaches more people, but being a decent human being.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's if you're not attractive in a recovery sense, you know, people aren't going to listen to you, right? And that's not a physical thing. That's just, are the words that are coming out of your mouth, are they coming from a place of compassion and empathy and experience, or are they coming from experience, you know, egotism and other things, you know? And that's the difference between, you know, catching somebody and being able to you know, give them some information that might be useful and scaring them away before they even have a chance.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of narcissists in AA. Maybe there's just a lot of narcissists everywhere, but
Sure.
And so if it couldn't be more true. Like if you hear something that resonates with you about somebody's story or about how they're carrying themselves or about anything, go talk to that person in the meeting, right?
Yep.
Because the thing about AA meetings is like the people there want to help.
Yeah.
It's not like going to the supermarket, you know, or calling Comcast. I really think you could solve the drug problem in this country if you made all of the drugs be distributed by, you know, Comcast customer service. It's so bad that I think everybody would just get sober.
We're going to legalize everything to cut down on the jail and prison population, but you have to get your drugs through Comcast.
Yes. And good luck with that.
Hey, I think we're on to something.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to find a candidate to push that legislation for us. Maybe
be.
that's what didn't work in Oregon. They should have sent the people through Comcast to get it when they decriminalize everything.
Right.
Well, holy crap, man! This hour and 2 minutes went by. That was super quick.
No, this is fun. I enjoyed it very much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is great, and I'm really happy to have you on because you're somebody that's still involved with AA and doing things and having a sponsor, because I really don't want people to get on and listen to the program and be like, oh, this guy's just hating on AA all the time, because I promise that is not my goal. I'm just having a discussion with people. And, you know, while we're thinking, I kind of had this thought in my head. It's like, so I do have these hard discussions about AA, and then I'm on here at the same time saying, give AA a shot. I should probably go back and give AA, you know, I should go to AA meeting just so I can, you know, be true to my word. You know, if I'm going to offer it out there to other people, I should still be giving it a shot. So, you know, I think in the next couple of weeks, I think I'm going to present myself in an AA meeting. And you know what? It'll probably be damn good. So I think I'm going to put that as a goal for me this week.
And you know, I bet you what happens, you're like, holy shit, I needed to hear that today. That is amazing, right? It's, and you know, then again, maybe not. But yeah, my intent is not to bash on AA. Mm-hmm. AA saved my life. It's one of many things at different inflection points for me. But I'm not sitting here talking to you without AA.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, anybody's listening who's struggling or, you know, anything like that, get to a meeting.
Yeah.
And just keep going back.
That's
all you got to do right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. They say They say, that, when you hit bottom or whatever. So if we're going to take that saying into context, so imagine yourself in this hole, you've got to your bottom and you're ready to make a change. Look at it this way, at least for me. AA was one of the rungs on that ladder that I built to get out of that hole. It doesn't mean, it wasn't the top step. It wasn't necessarily the first step. Probably pretty close to that, but it's just another rung of that ladder to get me out of that hole. And I can never take that away from it. No matter how many assholes come on and talk crap on social media, AA is, it was a big part of my early recovery. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I am a AA proponent, 100%. It's a good talk, man.
Yeah, this has been good, man. I needed to have you on today. This worked out really well. The conversation, what you bring to the table to the conversation really hit home with me today. I'm in a super good mood. I'm wide awake now. This was the dopamine hit that I needed, a healthy one, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, Brian, for coming on. And maybe, I keep talking about it. I want to do like a panel episode. I want to, have an opportunity to have people kind of from a variety of things to kind of talk about. And then we kind of compile a thing that seems to be working for everybody. And I think that would help people early on. So maybe we'll do that.
That is a great idea. That's a great idea.
Well, we'll try to put that together. I think I'm rejuvenated and ready to make another push with the podcast and try to get some things going with it. So anyway, Utah is now on the map. That is so cool. Another state to add to it, man. I got to get my poster back up and maybe I'll share a picture of it one time. But I put like the people's name and the state that they're from, and it's pretty damn cool. So, Brian, keep doing what you're doing, man. Congratulations on the 2.5 years. It's awesome.
Thank you.
And thank you for being willing to share about things. And, you never know who we touch today. So.
You're fantastic. Thanks for having me on. And, hey, have a good rest of your weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to go see what the boys are doing. Hopefully not too much chaos out there. So have a good day, Brian. Everybody, thanks for listening. Take care.
Bye-bye.